Okay, hello again. This is John Burroughs, and I am going to continue with my autobiography, 7 Years to Life. This is going to be chapter 15, and it's called Chinatown 1 and 2. I, like most of my friends, received a weekly allowance that we were allowed to do with how we best thought. I think the whole idea behind the allowances was that very early on, children learn the value of managing their money responsibly. You could spend it all in one day, if that was your preference. However, you would not see another penny until your next scheduled allowance payment. I had always stashed away a portion of my allowance each week for specifically three reasons. The first reason was that I had made a promise to myself that I would hop on the subway, alone if necessary, in order to see a couple of Yankee games each summer. I also thoroughly enjoyed and often craved for vanilla milkshakes down at Bennett's Corner Store. Lastly, I needed enough money each summer, whether or not we were going to Princess Bay, in order to go to Chinatown to buy fireworks such as barrel bombs, firecrackers, and cherry bombs. The teenagers in our neighborhood were perfectly willing to sell these fireworks to us. Unfortunately, the prices they would charge us were 2 or 3 times higher than what they originally purchased them for in Chinatown. The amount of fireworks that we received for our money was minuscule and usually only lasted for a day or two. Granted, the primary reason for having them was to celebrate the 4th of July, and being in possession of barrel bombs, firecrackers, and cherry bombs made you wicked cool. I became tired of the prices the teenagers were charging, so I went to spoke to Jimmy G, my best friend at the time, about taking the subway to Chinatown to do a little negotiating of our own. You would be able to purchase the necessary merchandise from Chinese laundries. Jimmy thought it was a great idea, and we were aboard the subway the following day in mid-June. This was a time of year when the laundries had an abundance of illegal fireworks. We found out from some of the older guys, two of the Chinese laundries, that would sell to just about anyone. We arrived at one of the places that we were told about, walked in, and stated our intentions. We paid for the merchandise, and it was placed in a small brown grocery bag. Our negotiations had been a minor struggle due to the fact that it was hard to understand the heavily Chinese accented English that our sellers were using to communicate. It was odd because once the transaction had been completed, we were instructed in almost perfect English to exit through the back door that led to a dingy alley. It became blatantly obvious as to why those instructions were given. 30 seconds after we entered the alleyway, three very intimidating guys, intimidating meaning they were older and either of Hispanic or African descent, jumped out at us and demanded that we relinquish to them the fireworks we had just purchased. If you have not guessed by now, we did so without the slightest bit of resistance. There were a number of lessons Jimmy and I learned that day, the least of which was why the teenagers were the ones that successfully purchased the fireworks and extracted the exorbitant prices that they charged. Jimmy was my best friend, and for a variety of reasons, but the most compelling bond that we had was a deep desire for revenge when we were taken advantage of. So this incident made for one fucked up 4th of July for a couple of 9-year-olds. We were definitely not going to be wicked cool that 4th of July. For the next 8 or 9 months, Jimmy and I commiserated with each other and vowed that we would get our revenge next summer. Whenever I have been burned in life, it is practically impossible for me to just forget about it. As the following summer approached, an idea started to form in my mind on how we could extract our revenge on this laundry. It did not take a genius to know that the owners of the laundry were the brain trust behind the rip-off scheme. Jimmy was of Cuban descent and was pretty light-skinned, while his sister had slightly darker skin, and though I could not attest to it being a 9-year-old, She was generally thought of as the most beautiful girl in the neighborhood, if not the entire world, if you were to believe what the older guys would say about her looks. If her reputation did not convince you, then all you needed to do was be around at the time she would decide to take a walk to Bennett's corner store and watch every guy past puberty turn their heads and gaze at her with lust in their eyes and sigh deeply. I told Jimmy my idea on how to get our revenge, but it involved his sister's participation. He started to laugh loudly when I told him the details, and he went and asked his sister if she would help. He said that she laughed louder than he did, but thought it would be fun to give it a try. The day finally rolled around when Jimmy, his sister Linda, and I hopped on the subway and headed for that treacherous laundry. The plan was quite simple. Linda would arrive at the laundry and stand about 20 feet away from its entrance on the corner. She would then look around bewildered as if she were lost. Her lost act performance would be the key to the success of our plan. Also, this time we brought along more cash than we had brought last time. We were going to buy fireworks for most of our friends. Jimmy and I were hiding off to the side, watching her sister do her thing, and just as I expected, there were a number of guys, including the ones that ripped us off last year, flirting with Linda, trying to help her out. As the old saying goes, she had them in the palm of her hand. She glanced over her left shoulder and saw Jimmy and I enter the laundry. At that point, she knew it was her job to keep those guys occupied for approximately 10 minutes. The Chinamen in the laundry did not realize what was happening on the corner. The transaction actually took less than 10 minutes that we had planned for, and when we stepped out into the alley, nobody jumped out at us, and there was not a soul to be seen. We walked calmly to the alley exit, looked to our right, and saw Linda at the corner. We turned left, and Jimmy, who could whistle with the best of them, did so. That was Linda's cue to thank these idiots for their help and meet Jimmy and I at a predetermined subway station. We rode that subway all the way home, laughing hysterically. Jimmy, Linda, and I became urban legends for a while. I must admit that my plan was one that worked to perfection, and I was proud of it. Little did I know the following year would be my last and most disastrous Chinatown visit that I would ever make.